truly recognize the memory's been freed up. As I recall, I've read some stuff on that being a potential trip up.
Okay, we're live. I'm pretty sure
Okay,
we're
great.
now. Microphone's working. SD cards reformatted. Things recording.
Good.
I used my own camera. It was like a Canon camera, like for photography. It was like high definition, like 4K. So it filled up every 20 minutes. I had to just replay it because it would stop from how much it was recording, like the data.
Wow.
I didn't realize at the time, and I was like, why is this stopping? And then, yeah. But you were saying about cartoons. What kind of cartoons did you watch? My cartoons growing up was Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network, which is discontinued. They just turned off the site like a couple months ago. Like Teen Titans, SpongeBob.
So when I was a kid, there were things like the Super Friends and the Electric Company. So my age is a little bit high. My age number is a little bit higher than yours. And so if you go on Disney Plus, you can find there's I think they have some of the old Spider-Man like Electric Company reruns short kind of stuff, and that was the stuff when I was a kid. I was a kid for the first round of Transformers and G.I. Joe and all that, so that's all stuff that I watched the cartoons of that when I was growing up.
So they had the Transformer cartoons before the movies?
Yeah, there was the cartoon for a couple years before the movie came out. And then I was like, I don't know, 8, 9, 10 years old when the movie came out, and I was super excited.
And the Electric Company is what made them all, is like the studio?
No, the Electric Company, that was just like the name of the show. And I don't know why it was called the Electric Company, but they would have like different stuff, and part of it, as I recall, was like a snippet of a Spider-Man cartoon. And he would do something, and typical, something would happen, and Spider-Man would save the day or whatever. And
yeah, I've watched a lot of anime. Anime has been where I've spent a lot of my time. Every time someone says they watch anime, I tell them I've probably seen whatever anime you've seen multiple times. Whatever you've seen.
I've seen a little bit of anime, and then now there's all this stuff that's like probably kind of significantly influenced from anime, but is not, isn't what we always thought of as anime. Isn't true anime, but it's somewhere in between, and so the lines are, at least from what the little bit that I've paid attention to, the lines are blurring. I saw someone put a I think it was a 3x3 table, and it's kind of like, where do you fit in the anime spectrum? Mm-hmm. I could try to find that if you want to see it. It was actually really cute because there was the real life inspiration into anime, and so they did the Cowboy Bebop live action, and then on another section it was the Cowboy Bebop actual cartoon, and I saw some folks who landed right there, and that's kind of in the middle. It was really funny because the people that I saw land said, "That's me, that's me." I was like, "Yep, I expected that to be you." And for me, it was actually more of the live action one.
Really, I do not enjoy live action. I feel like it destroys the image of animation.
It's more about the story and the ability to process the story. Is from my perspective, because I've watched a decent slice of Cowboy Bebop and I've tried to watch more of it, but the cartoon is it's quirky enough that I'm like, what are you trying to say there? What's going on here? Do I really understand what's going on? Whereas the live action one was a little bit simpler, and so I kind of I flowed with it. I enjoyed it more easily, I think, is the way to say it.
I think for me, animation allows for more possibility, where it's kind of like its own universe that can redefine every law. But with live action, you have to follow the normal laws.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
So it's like way more open-ended. It allows so much more to happen. Like if an anime character is flying for like 2 sequence in their jump, it's like, you don't really question it too much, but you can't really do that. You can't just jump.
No,
stay
not
for
at
2
all.
seconds.
Well, and you go through the standard superhero sequence of cartoons, like the Justice League cartoons and all that stuff. Great stories, well put together, all animation.
Yeah,
they've done some, and they did that with the Young Justice, what HBO Max's Young Justice thing, where they've got 4 seasons of the kids the kids growing up, the next generation of superheroes or whatever, from DC's version.
Have you watched Invincible?
No, I haven't. I've seen that. Is that good?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think the latest season came out not too long. The second season came out like a couple of days ago, so a lot of people are watching that now.
Did you watch the other thing that Prime did? It's like Special Operations, or it's a funny name that's not indicative of what it is, and it's 30 to 45 minute shorts. And the first one was a kind of Dungeons and Dragons themed one. I think there's some space ones, but they're their own little episodic adventure, is what it amounts to, and it's all animation. Yeah,
I don't know.
Interesting stuff.
I don't know it, but Invincible I would recommend. I mean,
Okay.
it's quite gory. It's gory. If you've seen like highlights.
Cartoon gore is a weird thing.
Oh no, it's quite gory.
Okay.
I would say
Even as cartoon?
it's as close to like real life gory as it can get.
Okay,
And
that might be too much for me. I'll try it. I've seen it and said, well, would I consider that? And for whatever reason, just never jumped into it. But
I like it. The story's pretty good. As
Okay.
well. So I want to talk about your experience.
all right.
So I've seen that you've been a Gator your whole life, right? You've been.
In more ways than just one. Both of my parents came here to the University of Florida, and so I've lived in Florida my whole life. And with my parents being both graduates here, I came here as an undergrad and stayed in Gainesville and been here ever since.
It's so interesting. And when did you start becoming a professor? Right out of graduate school?
So I did my undergraduate degree in classical studies, and then I got along the way I did the core coursework for computer science, and got my master's in computer engineering, and I completed that in 1999. I
26 years ago.
Yeah, long time ago.
That's older than me.
And then it happens, it catches up on you real fast. Life goes by quickly.
Yeah.
But it's still a fun ride. And I actually heard, this is an aside, but I think it's really true. I used to think in terms of it's not the destination, it's the journey. But then I heard somebody amend that recently. It's not the destination, it's not the journey, it's the people you go with.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, that's profound. I really like that. I like that a lot better than, I like it being the journey, not the destination, but I like it even better being the people that are with you on the journey.
Yeah.
So that's definitely a really refreshing thought. So in the summer of 2000, a friend of mine who was in the master's program with me, I was working at a software company and it was fine, but I was doing a lot of testing and verification, and that's not what I was hired to do. I was in the development department, but it was kind of boring. I had a couple of good projects that I had gotten to be involved in because I did the funniest thing. I named my variables. I looked at the way the company standard was for doing some stuff, and some folks had written code, C++ code, where they used the kind of standard int I length, and they did that camel case where the first thing was denoted what the type was. And so I was like, all right, if that's company standard, I'll do it. One of the senior developers saw my code, saw I was doing that, and I liked it, and pulled me into his special project that he was doing because he wanted to work with me. And I really think the only reason why was because he said, oh, this guy must write good code because I did that one small thing. And so that was wonderful. I always try to encourage students to pay attention to some of those nuances about what everybody else does.
Yeah.
Because of things like that. That was the best thing I did at that organization. They said, oh, you have this experience. He said, let's let Pete do this prototype. I got to dev up something. It never went anywhere, and then soon after I left the company and came to teach. But it was definitely it's something that stood out for me.
Because camel casing.
Because all it was is because of tight camel casing, simplest possible thing. But really, it was pay attention to standards, look at what the senior developers are doing, follow what the senior developers are doing, because then they're going to want to work with you. So I did that, but a lot of the stuff I was doing was not overly interesting. And
what was the company? What were you guys working on?
It was so I don't know that I should go into details like that because fluctuations. They were doing some statistical analysis of data, And
you can get technical.
So
I don't really. I want as technical as you can get.
So we'll just keep it at that, because they were doing statistical analysis of data, and we're doing some good stuff for certain specific industries that they were evaluating information for. And then I went to a friend of mine said, you don't really like what you're doing. Why don't you see what's going on in CISE at UF? And all right, okay. On kind of a whim, I went back and spoke to Joe Wilson, who at the time was the associate chair of CISE, and I'd worked with him when I completed my master's. And so I knew him well enough to walk up and say, hey, what's going on? Do you need lecturers? Yeah, we could. Funny story, he said, but you don't want to do this. Go work in industry, go away. And I came back a couple weeks later and I said, hey, so maybe he said, go away, but if you're still interested, come back in a week or so. He gave me some sort of the doors open but only cracked, and he tried to close it. And I think that was a way to kind of test out how interested, and if this was really the right thing for me.
Yeah.
And so I came back a couple of times, and eventually he came back with, we need some classes taught adjunct, so come teach adjunct for us. And that worked out perfectly. I jumped into the adjunct role for a couple of years, then a permanent lecturer position opened up, and I applied for and got that. And so I spent from August of 2000 through May of 2011 as a lecturer in CISE. And then in May 2011, I dropped out of the lecturer position and took a research assistantship so that I could get my PhD. Kind of like you've done this long enough without kind of checking all the boxes that often in the university environment are checked. Not that you have to have a terminal degree to teach, but it does help things out. And so I dropped out of the lecturer position, took the research assistantship, and then did my dissertation.
What was the dissertation on?
It was in machine learning. We were doing, I was working in the computational science and intelligence lab in the CIC department at UF, and we were looking at explosive hazard detection or landmine detection. Looking for stuff in the ground that if you hit it the wrong way, it might blow up unexpectedly. And there's a whole arm of the government, or there used to be, that has fluctuated some depending on what our needs are, but there's also some humanitarian efforts that are really focused on, we go have a conflict in an area, whether we agree or disagree with the conflict and all that is beside the point, because what happens is most of the time we as a society will put in place something that is going to be detrimental to others, and then we walk away and we don't document where we put it. And so there's, at one point, it was close to 100,000, what the estimate was about 100,000 unexploded ordnance that was sitting somewhere waiting for somebody to stumble upon it. There's a classic story of, it's got to be 25, 30 years ago now, that right outside of it was either middle school or elementary school in Orlando, where they found a bomb that was part of World War II testing. I think it was World War II, not World War I, but a bomb that was from obviously something a lot of years ago that was just sitting there in the ground.
And it wasn't detonated.
And it was within a block of an elementary school or a middle school. I don't remember which one. But little kids are running around and stumble upon something. That's not good. So whenever they did locate and find this object, they had to make sure it was unexploded, meaning that it could have gone off. It did not, and they removed it safely, which was really great. But that's not the kind of thing you want to just have your kids in the community stumble upon. And that's what's happening around the world. I'm sure it's going to be a nightmare in Gaza when, however, the conflict that still exists resolves itself. If folks have deployed unused ordnance, that's one thing. People just drop stuff in the ground. That's a problem. The second thing is if they actually deployed any kind of explosive device in order to protect a region, one direction or the other, it doesn't really matter. The rest of society is going to eventually come back into that space and step on it. And that's bad news. So that was our goal, was to try to help find where stuff is, and if we could locate it, remove it safely.
Underground. Unseen.
Underground, unseen, and in water too. We're still
water.
doing that. We're doing a lot with sonar, looking inside the water, and it's imagery, hyperspectral imagery. A lot of stuff with looking at just taking different views of the same.
I've seen like cartoons where it's like a mine attached to the underground and just floats like a floating mine.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. That stuff is. I've only seen some pictures of that. I did not work with the naval side. I didn't work with the aquatic side. I worked with the ground-based stuff. And really, with the ground-based stuff, I really didn't do much with. I've seen data get collected. I've seen the devices we use to collect. One of them is a handheld, your standard, you swipe it across the ground.
Metal detectors?
Metal detector kind of thing. But it does much. It sends a ground penetrating radar device, GPR device, sends a signal into the ground. We get a reading back, and we parse the reading to see what can we find from this, and then energy signature. But there's another kind of device where we have your standard bulldozer or front end loader that instead of the big scoop at the front has a giant magnet, and they roll that around and send that in the signal, and so that you can get as wide as this room.
Kind of like an MRI kind of thing.
A huge MRI device, and rolling it around and looking at the ground to see what's there.
Ground. Okay.
And that's where oftentimes what people are most interested in is, okay, so how do you demine? You don't really demine, you explode. So you detonate. In most cases, you end up just detonating the mine. You just do so in a controlled manner. And so they will often take a tank with a big drill bit, chains on the front of it, drive it up, chains into the ground, blow up the thing. The tank kind of jumps a little bit and then rolls to the next one. I never got to see any of that, but I've heard story tell of it. Some of the folks that are involved in the Department of Defense who do that work, it sounds like pretty interesting stuff. When they have a demining test, and they go through that because we were never actually in the field. We were only ever at test sites looking at stuff.
That makes me think of the bomb squads, like what is it? What do they call it? Like a bomb squad, the FBI bomb squad, or the SWAT team bomb squad, and they like come in and it's like handle the bomb situation. That's such a hard job. Being able to like come
it's intense,
and any moment you just blow up, and they have this like shield, and how well protected are you actually gonna be from these like shields?
Not enough. Certainly not enough.
Explosives are a dangerous invention, very dangerous invention, and very insane. Reminds me of the inventor of TNT, Nobel. I think it was him. Well, I don't remember his first name.
Yeah.
But the guy who founded the Nobel Prize.
Right.
That's an insane thing. More insane that he rebranded his name to be a prize, because he didn't want his legacy to be a TNT.
The explosion of things.
Yeah.
The explosion of things.
And then now that thought brings me to, I was just watching Iron Man with some friends, and I was thinking how Iron Man he changed his whole character because he didn't want his identity to be based upon a warmonger or war criminal. So.
Yeah, and it started the Marvel universe.
Yeah.
Or at least as we know it today.
Yeah. I was watching have you seen Star Wars?
Yes.
I just saw all the episodes in order for the first time yesterday.
Oh, I've never done that. That's so you did the big binge.
Yeah. It took about like 3 days to do it, and I did it with my roommate, and we have like this puzzle, like this old 500 piece, super hard. We just got the edges and we still didn't even finish. So quite interesting, quite fun.
So you multitasked.
Yeah.
That's good.
Actually, so my roommate likes to multitask a lot, and in the past, I really was not very good at multitasking, like getting a lot of sensory stuff at the same time. When I first took up computer science is when I really learned to focus. So my background is I came in as a business major, technically as sports management. I switched my first semester to business administration. Junior year, I switched to computer science, and that's when I actually started getting good grades, which is like crazy.
Okay.
But I learned to actually enjoy what I was studying and how to focus.
Nice.
My best mode of focusing was having a hoodie, dark room, and just my screen.
Oh, wow.
And no music, just whatever I was working on, I would just focus on that 100%.
Interesting.
But then I was around people, and then people would like play music all the time, and I couldn't focus.
Okay.
It's still kind of like that, but now I can kind of focus with music. So I guess I'm exploring my multitasking skills. I don't think I enjoy multitasking too much. I really like to be able to just put my head down and focus 100% on what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So still exploring that. Now I wouldn't say I'm a good multitasker. I don't think, and I believe, like, I've seen research that says like multitasking isn't real. Like, you can't really do it in terms of like your effectiveness to be able to do multiple things at once. Do you multitask?
Well, yes and no. I mean, the initial idea here of you've got a classic film on and you're doing a puzzle at the same time so that you can kind of half watch and kind of half not. I do the same thing with sometimes when I'm doing work. If you put on something and you a classic movie that you can connect and disconnect to, and it doesn't distract you too much from getting work done. The thing I noticed is I'm actually working my best when, if I put on a CD, play some album, and it starts to play, and then I know it's playing and I know what's coming next because I've listened to that playlist enough, and all of a sudden I realize I'm 20 songs in, and I missed all of these songs. Because I just ended up blocking them out because I was working, I was focusing. So sometimes that really works for me, and I know that's when I get the most done, is when the wheels really start spinning, and all of a sudden I notice, wait a second, I'm 2/3 of the way through the movie. How did that happen? I'm 2/3 of the way through the playlist. How did that happen? And I like that feeling, because then I know, I'm really cranking, and work's going well. It's going efficiently, and I'm focused on what I'm doing. So
it's dissociation. Associating from everything. But
well, in some ways, putting on something familiar that can be background noise, and it's the right kind of background noise. Sometimes for me, it really fits. Other times, if it's the wrong kind of background noise or the wrong kind of lighting, the sun's coming down and it's glaring in on you, that kind of stuff. So I can definitely know and be aware of some of those circumstantial environmental disruptions. But if it's auditory and it can be a droning kind of background thing, I guess I would do well with the whole, pound the drums and row, that kind of deal.
So you care about where you work? Because for me, sometimes I can't really work if it's not the right time and if it's not in the right space.
Absolutely, both of those help. There's also, for me, the flip side of it is my mother always described that if you look at my personality profile and if you pay attention to those kinds of things, my folks did, and so I looked at it too. And my mother always described my mindset and lifestyle as, it's not that there's a first minute or a last minute, there's the only minute. In that many times I will leave things to the literal last minute, but it's the only minute if that's the only time you have to address something, which really helps in dynamic circumstances. There are times when you got to just get things done fast, and you got to push things away and say, no, I got to crank at this and try to get it done. It's unfortunate when I leave it to my procrastination to require that to occur. So I've tried to adapt into planning ahead and whatnot. This semester I'm teaching discrete structures, and I'm giving quizzes, a practice quiz in lecture every day. And so I'm trying to remember, write the practice quiz well in advance. Don't leave it to the last minute, because that creates a little bit of a hectic environment when all of a sudden I realize I've showed up to class and I don't have the quiz ready, or something like that.
Yeah.
Planning ahead.
Computer science was the first actual academic. When I switched to computer science in my academic field, that was the first time I actually stopped procrastinating, because you can't, especially when you start.
You can't. It's true, and the same thing is true with instruction too, because you can't. It's good to plan ahead and good to rely upon the history and what you know. It's also good to think through what you're doing. That's one of the things as an instructor that I see, is that sometimes it's necessary to rely almost exclusively on, this is what we've done before. There is a formulaic approach. It works. Let's go and lean upon that. Other times, it's useful to reflect back upon, okay, so this is what we've done. Is there a change we could make? What tweak could we add? How could we enhance this? I would say that for most classes, most semesters, for any class, there's usually something that there's some dial that we're adjusting and saying, can we tweak this just a little bit to see if this will pique students' interest or help reveal something that wasn't revealed before, something like that.
So what's your favorite class that you teach or have taught?
I enjoy discrete structures a lot. I enjoy programming language concepts a lot. I enjoy software engineering a lot. And software engineering is, but the reason why I would say I enjoy software engineering a lot is because I've gotten to teach it a couple of times many years ago when we had a much smaller department. And so summer semester I had about 25 to 30 students in software engineering, and that was a great semester because we could really sink into everything with the cohort of students because it was such a smaller course. Now that we're dealing with hundreds of students in all of our classes, it's a bear. And software engineering, that class in particular is a lot more challenging to teach because you want to engage with students at the project level as much as you can, and that's so hard to do with just so many students. So that makes it a really challenging class to teach. But discrete is great because it's the math class, and I've taught it so many times that I think I have a reasonable read on how to adjust things for students to have a positive experience, meaning that we work hard to. I know sometimes in a class like that, you might end up with an average that's in the 40s or 50s on an exam. And
it's a hard class.
My averages are, most of the time, they're somewhere between 70 and 80 on discrete exams. And I still test the same way, the same material, the same content. And there's a specific reason for that, because I think for the psychology of the student, when you see your paper and you see, I got a 55 and there's a 20-point curve, you still think in terms of I got a 55 instead of if you get a 75 and there's no curve, but then you're like, well, but I got a 75. So there's something I anticipate if we talk to folks here, we're in the College of Education right now, I bet there's some psychology of education that says, yeah, that's a meaningful thing. So I try to target that. I try to target having higher averages whenever we can adjust things in such a way that it will help us get to seeing what the student knows and be able to assess that at a higher number rather than just give them a low number and then curve. Which is one of the great things about discrete. Programming language concepts is a great class because it's so project focused that students for probably the first time really get out of the coursework and do something that they can see real happen. Even when you're taking some of the other senior level electives, and of course if I'm not teaching it I can't say for sure, but I look at the outside at many of our courses and we create project work contrived solely so that you learn about a specific topical piece of information. And that's the only reason why you're completing this, so that I can learn what an array is, so that I can learn how to deal with semaphores in the operating system. You grab some random topic and you say, well, here's a contrived project, and you do the thing. And then you walk away and you never do use that again. Well, you create your own programming language. You're now seeing what it is to build a programming language. You're saying, okay, well, I'm going to use a programming language. I'm going to continue to compile code throughout potentially the rest of my career, or I'm going to interpret code if I'm just using a web browser throughout the rest of my life. So I have this stuff that's now practical, and I built it. I built the same thing that's going on behind the scenes for a web browser, for a development environment, and so on. So I think that really helps things get practical for students. And then the last nugget there that we get, and I got this from other faculty in our department. Beverly Sanders is a former CISE faculty member who just retired recently, and she influenced me greatly in my teaching experience as a colleague, because I saw how she did things and I learned from how she did things, and it was a fantastic experience to get to see how she taught classes like this. And it turns into we can thread the whole thing together. And this is a standard thing for this class, but I really liked how she formed and put things together. And it turns it into we have individual projects, but at the end of the semester we have a complete working entity. And that working entity doesn't have to intimidate us we can say things like, well, you won't pass the class unless your code runs from end to end. But you've taken the class and you know that not everything worked from end to end, but many aspects did work from end to end. And as you think about that, you have this ability to now say, well, I've built a real thing, and look, it went from one side to the other. And that's exciting. I think that's really exciting for the students in their own personal accomplishment.
Yeah, I think it's hard for us students to have some kind of ownership of a project like that, to find some kind of living project that's like getting better. You can take ownership and see it being added on towards. And I think that's something that's not really taught too much. It's hard to teach though. It's really just about commitment in a student. When when the class, you're forced to really do it. And I think students need to be pushed and encouraged to really commit to a project more. I think that's the most valuable thing, to commit to a project and just keep adding to it and keep improving on it. And that's kind of what PLC is about.
It absolutely, yeah. And the you also get the kind of a little bit of a flavor of the open source feel if code is given to you to assist you in the process.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is open sourced code to you, and now you continue to enhance, like you said. That's one of the things that we are looking at with a class like software engineering. How can do we build a standalone project, or in software engineering, do students take an open source project and grow it and potentially give back to the community? Something that is maybe not ever completed, in the sense that you'll complete requirements, but you're not going to actually solve the entire problem. One of the things that I've done in software engineering that I think is a lot of fun is when students are given the exercise of go find an open source project, pick something you can't possibly complete this semester. Instead, let's identify requirements that you can complete to add to the whole, and then give it back and let someone else continue from there to do the next thing. And that's I think where there's more potential for a student to, because you mentioned, really take ownership of it. There's more potential for taking ownership of that if you're involved in the decision making of, well, this is the thing we're going to work on. You made that choice, versus, well, here's the assignment that's given to you. Okay, now you're going to create this application, whether you care about it or not.
Yeah, I think one of the hardest things for me personally is trusting the value of what you're creating. Because if I don't trust the value of what I'm creating, then I'm just like, why am I doing this? It's useless. Like if I'm making some kind of program that's supposed to do this thing for me, and I'm like, do I actually even need this? How much is it actually going to help me in terms of maybe I can do something else? But I think it's a personal thing that I have to improve, and I think maybe for other students too, like you have to just trust the goal you put before you and commit to it and follow through with it, and then see afterwards, was it worth it? Is it good? And not question it while you're going, because if you question it while you're doing it,
you're not distracted.
You get distracted with something else. You won't do it.
You will be. Well, and that's part of the balance of having goals, yet at the same time not being consumed by them, not having any goals. And so the opposite of being consumed by your goals, the ability or the inability to step away, and to balance both sides of that spectrum. To say, well, this is worthwhile, even though it's just a class assignment that I'm never going to... I know people, and when I worked in industry, I knew someone who said, yeah, I didn't do really well in some of my classes because I looked at it and said, well, I don't want to do that, and I can still get a passing grade in the class. And okay, if you're content with that, that's fine, but you're going to miss a learning experience. And will you need it later? Maybe you will, maybe you won't. I don't know. But if you want to just have the learning experience, to put trust in this learning experience will take me to a destination that is worthwhile to me, then I'll get as much as I can out of that, whether I use it or not later on. That's a different thing. But then you can focus on the things that you're most excited about and have your extracurriculars be about where you really invest your time.
Yeah. You are the undergraduate coordinator for computer science.
Yes.
So when did you take up this role, and what does that mean?
That I'll have to think about for just a minute. It was either in 2000 or 2020 or 2021.
Recent. Pretty recent.
Yes. So I don't remember off the top of my head when exactly I shifted. One of our faculty, Richard Newman, Nemo, was retiring, and so the associate chair, CISE associate chair, came to me and said, "Hey, you want to do this?" And I said, "Sure." And I've really liked doing it. It's been a great experience being an undergraduate coordinator. I work a lot with the undergraduate advisors in the CISE department, and so spend time helping students from the academic but non-academic side of things, in that there's a lot of academic emphasis, but we're outside the classroom, and it's not associated with an individual course. It's associated with the holistic student experience. Mm-hmm. I kind of look at myself as the CISE fixer. If you saw the George Clooney movie from, I don't know, it's probably 15 or 20 years ago now, Michael Clayton, I think, he was always called in to handle a situation, and I feel like many times that's where, when, well, there's a need, okay, it's got anything to do with the undergraduate degree program, well, let's send it over Pete's way. And so I try to fulfill whatever I can and pull in the folks that need to be involved, since I'm not necessarily leading any one area, but I'm helping coordinate all the areas, like working with our TA coordinator, our curriculum committee chair, the folks that help shepherd our student organizations, and just pulling the academic affairs as well as student affairs, as well as all that curriculum affairs, all that kind of stuff together when it needs to be pulled together.
So you're in charge of the curriculum?
No, I am not in charge of the curriculum committee. Chair is in charge of the curriculum, but I am involved a lot, as if sometimes it looks like I am. Okay. But we do have a curriculum committee chair, and
for CISE specifically.
CISE specifically, and she leads the curriculum effort. But a lot of times when there's curriculum related things that come to advising, the advisors will make me aware. Here's something students are struggling with, simple stuff. There's a course that just got canceled because the instructor is on leave, maybe they have a family emergency, maybe they're going on sabbatical, who knows what, but they're gone. Class is not getting taught. Students need the class to graduate. We need to come up with a replacement course. So what options can we provide? And so we'll team together. Sometimes we draw the curriculum committee into that. Sometimes we're able to just make the decision ad hoc and move forward with a fix. Sometimes it starts with here's a fix for this semester, and it grows into a course need that really does have to go to the curriculum committee for a long-term evaluation and review. And so we're always kind of juggling those different unique situations that do arise. One, because we have a lot of students in the department. We're the largest undergraduate student body on campus. We've got over 4,000 undergraduate students across our degree programs. So there's you just look at the percentages, and if the percentages of unique needs and requests are the same in every department, but our department is so much larger, the number of those unique requests is going to be much larger, the actual physical number. So it's discrete. The set size is going to be larger of the intersection between the set of our students and the needs that arise across the semester. So we try to help the students with that, and that often will lead to either some sort of academic issue, a curriculum issue, and so on, that we try to help fix. And
so you're like the bridge between the board and the students in terms of.
In many ways, yeah. In many ways, when a student has a student care concern or need, many times I'm involved in assisting the College of Engineering will reach out when there's a concern for a student, and I'll assist in that process of helping. Whether it's just assist and support the student, whether it's in holistic life or in something academically focused, whether there's questions the student has regarding a prior course and engaging with the faculty member to try to resolve a situation that may have happened, try to help there. A lot of different things like that. I end up wearing a couple different hats. The thing I would like to do a lot more of is, time and resources and one big challenge. Time and resources and one big challenge are we would really benefit as a department from having more, to generalize a term, student orientation. Though it really would not be just student orientation, it would be at multiple points in the academic career to connect with students in an outside of the class about what you're gonna do in class. So you're approaching your the end of your career. And I know you mentioned junior year, and I know you're taking senior level courses in CISE, and so you're going to take your senior project sometime soon. And when you do, you currently are. So when you take your senior project, you had to check all the boxes to get senior project up and rolling. And we find across the board that students there's some lack of awareness about what needs to go into putting together your senior project. And so the course coordinator and the curriculum committee are trying to work ways to make that more efficient and effective for both the students and the faculty that advise the senior projects. At the same time, there's a certain level of, you just have to know, hey, here are steps to take. Here's how to start thinking about it. You brought up earlier a project I'm interested in, and I really want to pursue that. Well, that's kind of senior project. And if you start thinking about that sooner than later, it probably is to your benefit. So that dissemination of information to students, well, I think if we could get everybody in a room together at key points, like you're in the intro to course sequence, you're in 3502, 3503, somewhere in that space, those students are all kind of in the same cohort, pre-data structures. Then you got the students in data structures, you got the students after data structures. Once you get past data structures, for the most part, you're into all of the upper division courses in our department. That's kind of the gateway into the rest of the curriculum.
Yeah.
And it's such a critical topic, it makes sense. Mm-hmm. So you get past data structures. So I really want to meet with students early before they get to data structures. And I want to meet with students after they're done with data structures to say, here's stuff that you want to be thinking about. Because right after you finish data structures, you kind of snowball to the end of your degree program, and it can go kind of fast. And so you're done with data structures. Okay, great. You're going to take some tech electives. You're going to maybe take some other general education electives. You're going to check a few boxes, but you got to think about senior project. You might want to start to think about interviewing if you haven't already. You might want to start to think about, where would you want to work? Here's the Career Connections Resource Center. There's all of those different aspects that students find out about eventually.
Yeah.
But I get the feeling that in many cases, people are finding out about things later than they would want to. And so here's the big challenge. I said we've got a couple of things. Here's the big challenge. The big challenge is, how do we get students together in the space to have that conversation, to say, here's the stuff you need to know. For example, if you want to be involved in, and I'd like to do this at the introduction to the major pre-data structures level, if you want to be involved in research, pay attention to the areas that faculty are researching. Go look at the page and say, there's a page off the CISE homepage where it says, here are the research areas, and then you click on a research area, and there are all the faculty that are doing work in that research area. Go look at the papers they're publishing. Go look at what their PhD students are doing. Look at the projects they're involved in. Look at the classes they're taking. Target taking their class if you want to work with them. Do well in their class. Raise your hand. Ask good questions. Go to their office hours. Say, hey, I read your paper on. There's nothing like saying to someone, I read the work you did. Wow, wow, you read my work? So that's kind of cool. I read the work you did, and I'm curious about it. I want to know more about it. I want to be involved in it. Those are the things that we have somebody, I'm probably projecting. We had just had somebody look in, hey, on us. So there's nothing like having somebody connect with the things that the faculty member's doing, do well in their class, get involved from the class level, and then when you approach them, I want to do senior project with you, and here's why. I want to work with you as a graduate student or research student at the undergraduate level or graduate level. They're going to be able to see you will do the things they want to do and do them successfully if you've been successful in their class, if you've engaged with them. And that's the kind of stuff I'd like to talk to freshmen about. Or, well, I should say, UF has this weird thing because so many students enter with credits. Yeah. From their so UF uses first year, second year, third year, etc.
Yep.
Instead of freshman, sophomore, we would tend to think of as freshman, sophomore. But then there's also your first year or first semester in CISE versus your first year at UF. So the folks who are in their first semester or two at CISE, I want to talk to them about this kind of stuff. But I don't have a good way to get them into the room with me. So if you have ideas on that, that'd be awesome.
I was thinking about it, and I don't know if creating a solution is the solution for this. If you ask me, this kind of advice is really like there's things that you need to know in order to graduate. Like you need to just complete these amount of credits, and you need to like there's things you must know, like take care of your housing and stuff in order to get to college and stuff like that. Like there's like simple stuff, and like you'll find the resources to kind of get that done, and you learn about it. But I think what you want to solve is kind of a word of mouth thing. I don't think it's gonna be easy to create a solution for this word of mouth problem, because it really is. The only way I've heard about what you've said is from word of mouth,
right?
And unless you put it all on paper, and it's all so many different things you want to help them. It's kind of like a mentorship kind of assistance, that a mentorship level kind of assistance you want to provide.
Yeah, for sure. Mentorship is a good word for that.
Yeah,
I think that would be, and word of mouth is invaluable.
You know, maybe the best way to do it is, I mean, if you want to make a solution, the best way to do it is probably create some kind of mentorship program in terms of CISE, like, or even make it a requirement to say, if you've passed the data structure algorithm, you're expected to know a little bit about the atmosphere of computer science. So we're going to require you to take up 2 mentees, and then you can like report that in, and we want you to guide them and talk to them, meet them once a month, and talk to them. Say, have you done this? Have you pushed for this? And you encourage them, and you also track that as you track that for mentors, and you track that for mentees, and that way, as mentees become mentors, it like continues the cycle.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea. That's an interesting idea for how do we get. So then, how much of that could we actually?
1 credit course. That's what I would say. Get students.
Well, so there's another option. There's one option is you carve out a course for it. The other thing I thought about was to take probably data structures, but certainly 3502 or 3503, and say, come to this seminar. I'll offer 2 or 3 hour-and-a-half sessions a semester, and give either extra credit or full-on course credit for coming and participating in this thing. So effectively make it a requirement of the course, and then and dangle some carrot for participating, and then just go through this some of this kind of stuff and let people know about things and resources. Make sure students are paying attention to being on track for their degree program. Here's one that we get frequently is interdisciplinary electives in the CSE degree program in CISE, which is computer science underneath the College of Engineering. You have to complete 14 credits of interdisciplinary electives. And sometimes folks don't always realize what that entails. You have to find a specialization area and complete 14 credits in a specialization area. That gets tricky if there's not a minor in the kind of area you'd like to carve out. So then you have to kind of do it by hand if you really want to pursue that area, or otherwise you have to choose something else. And so students sometimes end up where they're late in their careers and they realize they really haven't handled this the right way, and they're still trying to patchwork it together. And they don't complete their degree when they would like to because they haven't been able to check that box. Or they're taking their last semester, they're doing senior project and 3 or 4 interdisciplinary electives because they've got to satisfy this one requirement. And sometimes you can't take all of the interdisciplinary electives in one semester because there might be prerequisites, and you got to take the prerequisite, which can count to your interdisciplinary, but then you got to take the follow-on course as well. So it gets tricky, and we'd like students to know about that sooner.
I think your biggest challenge would be finding the horses that want to be led to water. Like finding the students that actually want the help.
Yeah.
Because when you make it a requirement, and then they first assume everything that's required by UF is useless. Anything that is like strictly required, it's like, okay, this is more work I have to do now. Okay. So I that's the first thought.
Interesting.
In a student's mind was like, okay, there's a credit that I have to take. Like, the TA course. With Professor Michael Link. Yeah. It seems like I don't really need it, and it's a requirement. It's like, okay, at least I can make it 0 credits, so I don't have to like put all my effort into it. And I understand it's very valuable, but I might be biased because I think I'm a good TA, and my students may think I'm a good TA too.
Which course do you TA with?
Programming 2 with.
Okay, 3503.
Yeah. I love teaching it because it really does. I'd say it's. In my opinion, that is the course that is the gateway to becoming an actual software engineer.
Well, you start to do real programming.
Yeah,
3502, you play with it. 3503, you get your hands dirty in memory and pointers, and you're doing a real thing there for sure.
Yeah,
certainly.
So I do enjoy that one because I really tell them like, this is where a lot of make and break. This is where a lot of people make or break it.
Yeah.
And there's like a really critical, and we're actually in that week, in that critical point where it's like, if you don't actually hunker down, focus, and have trust in the process in this moment in time, then the cutoff will be seen right here.
Yeah, nice.
So that's I try to tell them.
So now you're seeing the other side of it.
Yep.
And that's one of the beautiful things about being a teacher is that you learn the topic and the material so much better because you had to teach it. That's wonderful. I'm excited that you're getting that.
No, I love it. I really do because programming too was I don't know if it was my favorite. I would say it's one of my favorite. I can't tell, but I knew that's when I learned how to focus. I learned how to focus. Like put my hoodie on, dark room, to start programming, and I was like, wow, I can do this. And it took a lot of effort. Sometimes one lab will take me 10 hours, 25 hours for one lab. And I was like, okay, but it's about like I really got value in this because I know this is what programming actually is.
Right.
Like Python is programming, but it's not to the extent of really learning a language a lot more. Like
and the requirements of the course are different.
Yes.
You take a step forward into the algorithmic structure of what's required of you.
Yes.
In Part B, absolutely.
Yeah, but what I was saying is the challenge is definitely figuring out how to help the ones that want, how to figure out how to help those that want to be helped, and then the other challenge, if you want to add that on, is figure out how to motivate the ones that don't want the help.
That want the help. For sure.
I would say, if you want to do that, and I think I personally believe that is the actual purpose of a teacher, to motivate the students, not to teach them, to motivate them, because honestly they're doing most of the work. You want to motivate them to learn, and then you guide them towards it.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I would say
that's a good mindset.
I would say. A solution for how to help the students, guide them into some kind of mentorship program, or teach them what they don't have, these like intangibles, I guess, or there's like it's so much. It's like abstract in a sense because there's so much information in terms of research, in terms of understanding, interviewing, jobs, understanding becoming a software engineer. Like it's all word of mouth kind of stuff.
Yeah.
If you want to make it like some kind of mentorship program or some kind of required program, I would say figure out how to make it a form of prestige, so students want.
Right.
So if you can figure out how to make it prestige-like to learn this information, then it'll be way easier because they'll want, and then once they want, then half the work is done.
Yeah, half the work for certainly, and then people will flock to it. Interesting. So, interesting. Yeah, we may have to think about how to. Well, we are, the CISE department is actually enacting this semester. I don't think it's been announced yet. It's not secret. It's just not been announced because it isn't. It might have been live. Might have started live next week. But we're taking the academic tutoring center, where tutoring services are provided for coursework, and a slice of the hours. I think it's approximately 5 hours a week, are being dedicated to peer advising. And so you'd go see the advisors in the tutors in the academic tutoring center to get advice on your coursework, which really amounts to not the same thing as going to see one of the academic advisors where you go look at, am I going to graduate? What do I need to graduate? And those kind of roles. You go talk about things like, which courses should I take together at the same time? Which faculty member does this kind of thing or that kind of thing? And how do I merge that together? And how do I take the two classes to be successful? And managing my schedule and some of those other student-led details that would provide that advice. So this is a good thought because it's another layer on top of that. That's interesting. And build a peer mentor program.
Maybe
for lack of a better term, I guess, big brother, big sister kind of mentality.
I would say figure out what the students really want. Most students really want a job. And I would say if you can figure out some way to not confirm, but figure out how to solidify, find some kind of statistics, say those that satisfy this mentorship program and do well and pass something, get this sort of prestige, they're 90% likely to get a job.
Okay. The key thing there is that if you're going to work in a team environment, and when you move into industry, if you work in a team environment, research, academia, any kind of team environment where you're not just working independently, you're going to see that kind of experience of mentoring someone else being mentored, learning how to be mentored, and learning how to mentor are going to be significant because you're going to work and collaborate with other people. And most likely, it's not going to be in complete isolation. It's not always going to be in a perfect scenario where the person's always helpful or always available, or the person you need to do the work is going to be, you're going to learn stuff about how to relate to people well and create those dynamics for sure. That's going to be.
I think it'd be very valuable if you just didn't have one mentor either, because I think where analyzing people, there's a fault in analyzing people, and I've realized this like interviewing for jobs. If you find that your interviewer doesn't like you, then that's it, and that's just your one interview, and that's like your one. That's
one
like,
shot.
That's it. So I say it's very valuable to maybe have multiple. Not many, like maybe 2 mentors. So then mentors have a lot of options. If someone already has a mentor, it's not closed off. And it's good to have multiple perspectives as well as a mentor. Because if you just have one mentor and they do a bad job, or you really don't click with them, or you don't agree with them, you figure out with your other mentor, like what is working, what doesn't work, how similar are they, different, and you really understand how to work with different people as well.
Yeah, for sure.
It's 3:28, and I do want to let you go for your lecture at 4.
Oh, thank you.
And I wanted to bring one more thing also to the conversation. Peer mentors. What is the percentage of, not peer mentors, advisors? What is the percentage of advisors to students in this department compared to other departments? Because it seems as though it's very hard to get in touch with them, and it's not that they're not helpful, but sometimes I do wish for more.
We have a ratio of, at the moment, it's 700 students per advisor. Yeah. So we have about 2,800 students that are in our range. The College of Engineering provides first-year advising to students, and so some of the CISE student body is in that set. But the remaining 2,800 are advised by dedicated CISE advisors, and there's 4 CISE advisors. So that gives us a ratio of 1 to 700, which is way too large. We were given funds to hire an advisor over the summer, so that reduced that ratio. The number of students enrolled in CISE went up. So numbers from when the hire was made, we were probably at about 1 to 650. If we had hired the 4th person, we would have dropped to 1 to 650, but because of new students in the degree programs, we're now at 1 to 700. That's not the direction we want to be moving in. I've been talking to the department and the college regularly about this to continue making steps forward and saying we need to keep hiring new people.
Are we being stingy with money? What is it?
Well, there's a lot of politics that goes into the money. Is the easiest thing. And it's hard because there's other departments that have needs too. So I don't know exactly what the numbers are. We are the largest on campus, but again, you got to look at other departments and see, well, not only what is their student body, but how many advisors do they have? So our target is to try to get down to a 1 to 450 ratio, which would be a great step forward. If we got down to that, we probably are at a much, much more functional level. We're making some other changes though along the way. Our advisors work really hard. And
they are.
They're so in that they can't speak enough about the accolades that they deserve because of how much they do, and they are, and sometimes it's just simple things. We had 2 advisors leave in I want to say it was in a 9 to 10 month period, right around 2021, right around the middle of COVID. And so we hired 2 new academic advisors. Well, we hired them so close together that they were both still training and taking care of things. And we had one advisor that at that point was helping make sure our, at the time, probably around 1,500 students were getting done. And everything was completed. Everybody graduated. She got it all done. It was amazing. But it took a lot of effort. And so the next thing that we're looking to do is to try to develop more direct connections with students and advisors. So if you go to the website now, it should be under the Canvas advising page. I know it's live under the department website. It's going to be coming live soon if it isn't already. We're going to split up the student body into named ranges so that you have the same advisor. I can't say throughout your entire experience.
That'd be preferred.
Because we're still working to get the details together, but that's the goal, is to say as a sophomore, well, second year student, because
Yeah.
first year does first year advising, as a second year student, you'll see the same advisor throughout. Now, the reason why we haven't done that before was because of just the glut of students with needs. It was a little bit easier to say, see the first person available.
Yep.
Now that we've gotten a little bit of easement back, we reduced from a 1 to 900 ratio, now we're at 1 to 700, and we're hoping to get more advising support. We're shifting to the model of that dedicated advisor. And we have a scheme that we believe is going to allow students to stay with that advisor for second, third, fourth, fifth year. Some students graduate somewhere, most students graduate between their fourth and fifth year. And so second through fifth year, you'll stick with that same advisor and develop that relationship. Our hope is that by developing that relationship, you actually end up seeing the advisor less, which means that when you do need to see your advisor, they're more available.
I would say so. I only meet with one advisor, Andrew Appling.
You always go to Andrew. Okay, great.
I always go to Andrew.
Yeah, you always go to Andrew.
I always schedule my appointments with him, and he seems to satisfy all of my issues in the best way. I've had other advisors, and they were not as helpful as Andrew. Andrew's been really good, but maybe because I just made that connection with him early on. He was actually the advisor. I think he helped me transition to computer science, and I spoke with him a lot. So yeah. I think we built a little bond there. Hopefully I meet with him one more time before I graduate, and I'm sure I will. I actually want to interview him as well. I would love for him to come in and talk.
Okay, yeah.
So I do hope to do that. All right, so it's 3:33. Anything else you'd like to say or anything like that?
Well, who's our target audience?
Anyone that wants to see, but I would assume anyone from Gainesville.
So the thing there is, I think the things that come to mind for if our target audience is folks in Gainesville, then kind of folks associated with UF. There's a lot of great stuff here in Gainesville. There's a lot of great things to do outside of Gainesville. And that's what I always encourage students to think about when they're considering UF and or Gainesville as a destination. Yep. You can look at me. I came, I stayed because of people and relationships. I stayed because I like what I do, and so there's opportunities for that. So that makes some pretty important things, but there's lots of opportunities out there, and I hope that students can find what they're passionate about, where they want to spend their time, how they can find work-life balance. Yep. I know I have a friend who is, if you go to the mural in the basketball stadium, the facilities for the basketball, there's a mural on one of the walls, like the entrance to the big new fancy basketball practice facility. There's a mural on the wall where you see some of the prior coaches, Billy Donovan, Lon Kruger, etc. And my friend is actually on the wall because he's been so involved in the UF, specifically basketball program. And as over the years, I asked him at one point, and I said, you love this so much, and I look at your job, and you do this health advocacy thing that you're great at, and that's wonderful, but it has nothing to do with basketball. What's up with this? And he said, if I turned my passion into my job, then it would just be a job. And I liked that. Sometimes our passion can be our job, and that really fits for some people and for some circumstances. Other times, keeping that separate is really meaningful, and that's what I learned from him in that quote, is that here's this thing where I have devoted a lot of my life to it, and I'm passionate about it, but it doesn't help me retire. It doesn't help me provide food for my life, and it's look at all this stuff. It doesn't do any of that stuff. It just gives me a passion, and I love this passion, so I'm going to continue pursuing it. So pursue your passions. Find what your passions are. Pursue your passions, and if your passions don't overlap with what your career is, that can be okay. You still have to have a career. You still need to have a career. But if your passion is so great, maybe your career doesn't have to be something you're as passionate about. Maybe it just pays the bills, and that's okay. There's a balance there. And I think sometimes we lose perspective on that, either because we pigeonhole ourselves into, I got to do this one thing, or we say, well, I can't just do my job for the sake of being a job and walk away from it and have a great life because I'm not doing a certain thing. No, there's lots of opportunities, and that may grow and change. Other thing that I saw was I came to UF as an instructional faculty, and I said, I'll do it for a couple of years and see what happens. And I learned that I did it for much more than a couple of years. I tried something out. And that'd be the next thing that I would encourage folks to do, is try stuff out. If you're interested in it, try it out, go see what happens. You don't have to have all the answers at the start. Again, like we said at the beginning, it's the journey and the people that you engage with along the journey. More the emphasis on the engaging with those relational connections. And that's the most important thing. So that's my hope for our students, for the folks in Gainesville. I think relational community, and you look at this, you see this statistically. If you look at addictions, the most substantive recovery process for addiction, there's immediate needs and concerns that help support, but the way that we grow, it doesn't even have to deal with it. That's just one area. But you look at the psychology of addiction, you look at how we grow as people and how we become better. It's in community. I think relational community is the most important thing that we can be involved in. So I'm a big proponent of that, and I hope that classes do that, right? Because we've got a community and we can relate together, and so
that's perfect way to end it. That's awesome. I 100% agree with connectedness. Connectedness is one of the most important things for humans individually and as society, and to find your passion is super important. And I think something, especially for me, I don't know if I found my passion yet, but I think it's important to always say that it's never too late to find a passion.
Yeah, and there's always new ones.
Yeah.
You don't have to stay with it doesn't have to stay with just one. And that's a great perspective.
Yeah.
That's exciting, yeah.
All right.
Well, thanks for having me, Ken.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
You did it amazing. I'll end it right here.